Hello everyone, my name is Miss Wilson, Miss Jennifer Wilson from White Bluff Elementary School, and I am a fifth grade science teacher. Welcome. I have some wonderful things that I want to review, maybe reintroduce to some, but they all have to do with the wonderful world of science. So I have some items here on my table that I'm going to be showing you, and you will have a chance to see me do some hands-on actual little experiments, and I think you're going to enjoy them. But before we do that, I want to do what's called a little bit of a review. So for fifth graders, we pretty much have had some units that you've already familiar with, and our first unit of instruction for fifth grade is the earth and its changes. You may remember some of the vocabulary or even some of the materials that you learned about dealing with this wonderful planet that we live on. So, again, the first unit of science of fifth grade was the earth and its changes. And we know that the earth, there are destructive processes and constructive processes, and they either tear down the earth's surface or build it up. So one of the things that I'm sure you learned about, this is just a review, were things like tornadoes, tsunamis. Those are what type of processes? Right, destructive. They tear down the earth's surface. But then there are things that build up the earth's surface. So that means that things get deposited, and there's so many amazing processes. One word that I'm sure you remember was, I have something here, sediment. Sediment. Can you see that? Sediment. How do we get sediment? You might say, well, isn't that sand? And you're absolutely right. So I'm going to pour a little, because I love getting my hands dirty and touching things. How many of you are like that? More tactile, kinesthetic? I love touching things. So how do we get sand or sediment? Glad you asked. But I bet you remember, there's a word called weathering. And it's the breaking of rock. So when rocks rub together or grind together, large rocks, small rocks, they make this amazing little stuff called sand or sediment. Do you remember that? I thought you did. So that was unit 1, where we learned about the many structures and erosion, the wearing away of rock, deposition, the dropping off of sediment, so things build up. Amazing. That was unit 1. Now let's go to unit 2. Do you remember unit 2? Unit 2 had to deal with, I love this word, classification. Classification. When we classify things, we put them in groups of how they're alike. So we do that with all organisms on our planet. So I think you might remember that the way that we classify animals, whether they have I'm going to turn so you see mine, a backbone. A backbone. A backbone. You and I have backbones. So that's known as what's that word? It starts with a V. Vertebrae. Look how smart you are. You're making me so proud. A vertebrae. An organism that has a backbone is a vertebrae. But then there are other organisms that have no backbones. And you might say, now, how could that be, Miss Wilson? I know, but it's true. If you think about it, you probably are very familiar with an organism that has no backbone. Now, remember, they would probably be kind of because remember, they have no skeleton. They have nothing to hold them up. So an example of an organism with no backbone would be a jellyfish. Excellent. Very good. Or a squid. No backbone. So those were the ways that we classify animals. Vertebrae or non-vertebrae. Do you remember that? And it's so easy to remember. I bet you're sitting at home going, oh yes, I do remember that. Now there's also a way that we classify plants. Do you remember that? Sure you do. So I went outside before I got here, and we're very fortunate in Savannah for so many reasons, is because we have this stuff here. I'm gonna hold it up. I bet it's somewhere in your yard. It might be hanging on a tree. See this stuff? Love this stuff. You know what it is, don't you? It's usually draped or living on another organism like a tree or a shrub or a bush. So it's our Spanish moss. Spanish moss, you've seen it. But what you may not know is it's alive. It's a living thing. But how is it a living? How? Does it have a backbone? Plants don't have backbones, but they do live according to if they have something or not. Roots. Roots. So Spanish moss is something that you could go outside, pull off the tree, pick up off the ground, and really look at it. It's alive. It's a living organism. However, it doesn't have roots. So that's why it's usually draped over a tree or a bush, because it absorbs its water off the tree. So whatever the tree or the bush is getting, it sucks it up as well. Amazing thing. And I just can't resist, though. I have one of my tools. A little tool, can you see that? It's my handheld lens. It's not a microscope. It's literally a handheld lens. And you'd be amazed what this allows me to really see on this organism. You might say, oh, Miss Wilson, it makes me itch sometimes, or are there bugs in there? Yes, yes. So when I use this tool, again, what's it called? I can't hear you. It's a handheld lens, and it makes smaller things appear larger. So trust me, I'm going to use my handheld lens, and I'm going to just zoom in there. Amazing. And I mean the texture. There's that word texture. All that means is how something feels. Yes. So this allows me to see that there's a whole world going on in Spanish moss. Amazing. Amazing. You could go outside, grab some of this now. So Spanish moss is a plant, and I classify it because it has no roots. So guess what that's called? Non-vascular. I also went outside and just pulled out of the ground a little plant, and see them? This actually this was in the ground. It does not live on another organism. I pulled it up out of the ground. I pulled it up, and dangling on the end in that sand are tiny little thread-like things. Let me get a closer look here. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. What is amazing to me is these are called, exactly, roots. This is how this plant gets water and nutrients from its roots. The roots are in the ground, and when it rains, the roots have the job of carrying water up through those tiny little roots to the stems, leaves. It's an amazing process. I want you to take some time when you have a moment and go outside, pull up a plant. Even a grass plant has roots. You're gonna see all these infinite, they look like little pieces of hair. They're very, very narrow on this plant. And my gosh, all working together to keep the plant hydrated with water, minerals. Everything it gets is from the roots. So that was unit 2. I got a little excited. I spent more time on that. But I'm going to put those aside. So let's recap. So unit 1, the earth and its changes. Unit 2, classification of animals and plants. And do you remember unit 3? Click in here. Uh-oh. There we go. Unit 3, plant and animal cells and microorganisms. And that's pretty appropriate because microorganisms are small things that we cannot see with our naked eye. And they are in the atmosphere, they're in the air, and some of them are hurtful, some are harmful. They're landing on everything, our food, our skin, they're in the water we drink, but they don't harm us all the time. So that dealt with plant and animal cells. So here's a tool that we use. I'm going to hold it up and see if you can remember it. A microscope. It's impossible to see the cells of a plant or an animal without a piece of technology, a tool, because we cannot see them with our naked eye. I can't look around and say, oh, look, I see. They're too small or microscopic. So here's what we do as scientists and learners of science, which you are. We'll take a sample and we'll put it on what's called a slide. Tiny little piece of whatever, a tiny little piece of a plant, a tiny little piece of anything that you want to look closer at, and we put it under a microscope. So this one is a tiny smear of human blood. So many things inside of our blood. So I will put the slide, secure it with my clamps, and I begin the process of adjusting and trying to zoom in on that. I have lenses that magnify, make things look bigger. So these are tools that we use. Do you remember discussing animal and plant cells? I think you do, and the parts of animal and plant cells. I bet you remember nucleus. Yeah, it's the control center. Kind of tells the cell what to do. We'll talk more about that. So remember, this is just a review, just a review. So let's go to Unit 4. Unit 4. Oh, this was one of my students' favorite units. It dealt with electricity and magnetism. So we do know that there is a way that we can generate electricity. Yes. And that's static electricity. We can do it by rubbing our feet on the carpet. A really fun way is taking a balloon, rubbing it on our hair. I'm generating, I'm making electricity. Or a really, really fun one is that you can, ever been on a slide, a metal slide? You kind of climb the ladder, slide your little bottom down, and you're creating static, friction. That's awesome. So that's another unit we talked, and a part of our unit was, this was a favorite, was magnetism. So I have a couple examples here of magnets that we use. These are my bar magnets. Watch what happens. I'm not doing that. That's doing it on its own. It's not a trick camera. See that? We call that the power. These two magnets are, what's that word? Attracting. Very good, look. Now there's something else that magnets do. Watch, I'm gonna turn the ends from north-north. We'll talk about that too. Watch what happens. They're still attracting, right? Let me try this one. Oh, there we go. They're not moving as readily as they were. Let's look. Do you know what that word is? Look, I can tell you for a fact that there is actually a force that's not wanting them to attract. Let's turn the other sides. Watch this. Oh, that's easy. Look, that's attracting, isn't it? And it's going very quickly. When I turn the ends, not so much, huh? Do you see that? There's resistance there. So they're not attracting, they're repelling. They're so smart. They're so smart. So here are my bar magnets. And I also have which is kind of funny, a horseshoe magnet. It still has a north and south pole. It's just shaped like a horseshoe. And I have a couple of, these are some tools, some washers, and just some tools. Attraction. Yeah. And that's a paper clip. Can you see that? Definitely attracting. The wonderful thing that we learned through magnetism is that we have a wonderful magnetic field, and each magnet is a north and southern pole. So the like poles repel. See, these two aren't wanting to get next to each other. They're not wanting to. They're repelling. So let's try the other like poles. They're repelling. I'm not doing this. They are pushing away. But when I do unlike poles, a north and a south, look what happens. Definitely attracting. Definitely attracting. So this again is review. This was a favorite unit for students, and you're probably saying that's really cool. And what we were wondering about is, where does the power of magnetism come from? Like, how are these magnets doing what they're doing? Because they're not operated by a battery. I'm not plugging them in the wall to tap into electricity. It is a natural power. And believe it or not, scientists believe that the power of magnetism comes from the Earth's core, which is made of a molten iron. And it creates a magnetic field. It's just a wonder. It's just amazing. So you might even have magnets at home. If you do, they will attract and they will repel. And they never wear out, although there is a way to demagnetize a magnet, but the power of magnetism comes from our planet. Amazing. So I'm going to move on, because that was one of my favorites too. And I'm going to click my clicker. And now that brings us to Unit 5. Unit 5 dealt with physical and chemical changes. So I'm going to prepare to show you a very simple experiment that you can either do at home or outside with the permission of your parents or caregivers. And it's where we deal with words like solid, liquid, gas, and temperature. So before I get ready to do my experiment, which I have my tools already here, I'm going to put on my smock to protect my clothes. Here's my smock. Put it on like so, and tie it to protect myself and my clothes. And even though I'm wearing glasses, it's always safe to put on safety goggles to protect my eyes. So we're going to be using a couple of chemicals. They're mild, but safety is always first, scientists, safety. So I'm going to try to put these on top of my glasses. Don't laugh. Am I good? Thank you. Alrighty. Our experiment today that deals with physical and chemical changes is going to involve about 3 ingredients, and it's going to be fun. One of those ingredients, well, some of the things you'll need to do this, you will need some baking soda. And remember, I'm doing it today, but you'll need the permission of your parents. You are going to need, what's about 2-liter bottle. You can use a smaller one. Regular plastic bottle. I peeled the label off just so we could see it clearer. And you are going to need a balloon. A good one. These are latex balloons. They're kind of the thick ones. You're going to need that. And our final ingredient of what we're going to be using today is good old vinegar. Ah, I love vinegar. It basically is acidic. It's a great tool to start just mild experiments. So, what are we going to do today? Our topic today is solids, liquids, and gases. So we've got a couple of things. We've got baking soda, which, what would you consider baking soda? Would it be a solid, a liquid, or a gas? What do you think? There I am again, touching things, because that's what science is about, really, touching. Look, there's my baking soda. What do you think that would exactly solid? And then I have my balloon, solid, liquid, or gas. There you go, solid. My plastic container. Solid again. Very good. So, I'm getting excited. So what do? So we have to take our balloon, and I use what's called a funnel. It just makes it easier. And I put a funnel right in the mouth of my balloon, and I just go ahead and I pour baking soda, a good amount, and I just let it kind of get in the balloon. The more baking soda, the better. See that? I've already done a couple, so that's a good thing. I've already done a couple. So I've got a couple of balloons that are already really filled to the gills. This one's really heavy. It's got a lot of baking soda in there. Remember, this is the unit where we're focusing on physical and chemical changes. So what's my next step? Glad you asked. I have my container that's empty. I'm gonna also use my funnel, and I'm going to pour the liquid. What liquid was it again? Absolutely, vinegar. I'm gonna pour some vinegar through my funnel, and I'm gonna be generous. I want a lot. Let's keep going. So funnel, you see my funnel? That's like a household tool. You may have seen one at your house. Maybe mom or someone in your household was using it. Maybe the car, sometimes they use this to pour oil in the car. So I have about a third, my bottle is a third way full. Can you see that? And actually, just so we have that good effect, I'm gonna add a little bit more. I think we're there. Just to keep things safe and neat, I have a tray that I'm working on. So all of my baking soda, even when it splatters, it's in this tray, so it doesn't make a mess. So now I have my 2-liter bottle, and it's about halfway full of what type of matter? Thank you, vinegar, a liquid. And now I am going to take one of my pre-filled balloons that's filled, pretty packed in there. It's filled with baking soda. I am going to take the balloon and I'm going to put it over the mouth of the bottle. Now we're talking about solids, liquids, gases, physical changes. It looks like I am going to be looking, I want to know, you might know what is going to happen, but I want you to think about what changes have happened, right? What's changing? I started out with the liquid and the solid. Let's see what happens. Are you ready? I'm going to now place the balloon over the mouth of the liter of what? Vinegar. See how it's like kind of clumped to the side? I have to turn it upside down and release the baking soda, the solid, into the liquid. Okay? So I'm going to do that, and then I want us, before I do it, I want us to think about, maybe sometimes it's even called guess what's going to happen. That's a hypothesis. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? I'm going to give you a minute to think about what will happen. You probably already know. Let's watch. Ready? Notice I'm stepping back. What's happening? Wow. Uh-oh. It's still reacting. That might be a word that you don't think you know, but you do. Do you see the fizzing? See the bubbling and the fizzing? That's a reaction. Wow. Nice. Now, aside from it being fun and exciting, what happened? A new substance was created. Do you know what new substance was created? Absolutely. A gas. A gas was created. The baking soda and the vinegar reacted. And as a result, gas was produced. And that gas blew up that balloon. Look at that. Here's something that happened that you probably, at home, you can't feel, but something else happened. I'm gonna touch the bottle. Oh my gosh. You're not gonna believe it. It's cold. It's cold. That tells me that there has been a decrease in Temperature, absolutely. If you could zoom in and see, you may not be able to. And if you try this at home, if you look at the vinegar and the baking soda, there's still mild bubbles happening in there. It's still reacting. The main part of the reaction caused a gas. So boys and girls, you have the ability at home, with the permission of your parents, to do a very easy science experiment. We actually changed physical states. We created a reaction. How exciting is that? And this is what it produced, gas. There was so much of reaction that it blew the balloon up. So again, this is a mild example of a physical change. Physical changes are when you start out with something and you end up with something new. What did we start out with? And what's the thing that we didn't have in the beginning? We didn't have gas. How exciting! How fun is this? So that's my experiment for you, and you can definitely do this at home, but you want to make sure that we're safe. We want to make sure, because as that balloon was inflating, it kept going and going. It could have popped, so you want to make sure that you have on your smock and your goggles. So I hope you have enjoyed this time with me. I have enjoyed it with you. So as a quick review, we went over Unit 1. Remember that? That was the earth and its changes. Remember that? And we dealt with sediment. Unit 2, that was classification. How do we classify animals? Backbone or no backbone? How do we classify plants? Roots or no roots? Unit 3 was the microscope, plant and animal cells and microorganisms. Unit 4 was one of my favorites, magnetism and electricity. And today, a very brief view into Unit 5, physical and chemical changes. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you again. Remember, science is everywhere. Have a great afternoon. This is Miss Wilson from White Bluff Elementary.